General Alexei Leonov, the first man to walk in space, is on his way to Star City. It's hidden in woods 25 miles outside Moscow. Star City is the place where Soviet cosmonauts are prepared for space travel. Until recently, it was closed to Westerners. Star City was built 30 years ago as the home of the elite cosmonaut corps. But with the country facing economic collapse, glory is not enough. Space travelers, like everyone else, must prove they can pay their way. In 1989, we began following a new crew, training for a 6-month space flight. It would be a mission that would have the world catching its breath. Leonov, the head of cosmonaut training, takes a personal interest in the progress of his crews. The commander has flown a short mission before, but it will be the engineers' first flight. In the months ahead, they will spend a lot of time flying this spacecraft simulator. Their instructor wants to ensure they'll be able to deal with any emergencies.
Родники, как слышите?
При работе родника второго, при нажатии на клавишу «Связь» появляется какой-то...
Our training session goes according to schedule. Step by step, minute by minute. Everything is okay. Very good crew.
Colonel Anatoly Solovyov is the commander, and Alexander Balandin is the engineer. They represent a new breed of cosmonaut that want to shake off the old heroic image. For them, it's not enough just to go to space. They need to do something useful once they're up there.
The desire to fly came to me as a child. I wanted to become a military pilot, and I became one. By chance, a selection commission arrived and offered me the opportunity of becoming a cosmonaut. I certainly wasn't about to turn it down. I see my work in space as a continuation of my previous profession. I tried my hardest to get through the training and succeeded in becoming a cosmonaut.
After the first 5 years of training, my exuberance wore off. I was young when I joined the Corps. Then the so-called routine training began. We've come to look at it differently now. It's our job. I can't really say that I have the feelings that people would expect me to have. On the contrary, I look at it as my profession. It's a work that I love.
But it must be interesting.
Of course it's interesting. Of course it's interesting. The stories I have heard many times from my colleagues and friends, I just don't believe they could leave anyone feeling different.
Вот 3 раза в таком.
I went into space 3 times in this spacesuit. 3 times I came back in a spaceship like this. 3 times our lives hung on this rope, and 3 times it supported us.
So what does it take to be a cosmonaut? Georgy Grechko has the right stuff. And unlike most cosmonauts, he's prepared to talk about it.
Of course, we are not the children of God. We're just like you. However, in life-threatening situations, people often lose their nerve and they forget everything they know. With us, it's different. In dangerous situations, we have to summon up all our courage. Once, the parachute of my spacecraft didn't open when it should have done. I thought I had only 5 minutes to live. It was frightening. I was sweating and my heart was pounding. This fear paralyzed my movements. I just wanted to close my eyes and do nothing at all. But I had to overcome my feelings. And I decided that during those last 5 minutes of my life, I should find out what was happening to the ship. I started to check the different systems on my monitors. It was tremendously difficult, because I thought that I'd be dead in a couple of minutes. But I managed to overcome my feelings, which is a hard thing to do. You know, feelings are more difficult to control than fire or water. Of course, a lot of people can become cosmonauts, but not everyone.
Today, most cosmonaut training is not pulling G or being turned upside down. It is learning about engine parameters and orbital velocities. They must understand the problems of living in space and performing scientific experiments. A strict timetable governs every hour of their day. In this 6-month lead-up to the launch, their lives become a mental and physical marathon. Both of them have been in training for a total of 10 years. The last 2 years have been spent together, preparing for the current mission. Solovyov's wife, Natasha, also works in Star City. She is a programmer on the spacecraft simulator, so she knows the risks her husband will face.
Of course, I know more about his job than any of the other cosmonauts' wives. I know what to expect and what can go wrong. So, in some ways, it's more difficult for me. But in some ways, it's easier.
The Solovyovs have 2 sons, Ilya and Gennady. Neither thinks he has the stamina to be a cosmonaut and prefer the idea of their father's former life as a fighter pilot. With the launch date 4 months away, Solovyov and Balandin see less and less of their families. Most commanders are military pilots, and they live with their families in special apartment blocks inside Star City. The engineers are usually civilian and live outside. Sasha Balandin has a 6-year-old daughter, Yulia. His wife, Lida, is expecting a baby, so he could be in space when their next child is born.
Of course it'll be hard. Even now, when he's training, I feel his absence. When he wasn't training, we were together more often. Our daughter saw her father more often. Nevertheless, it's a temporary necessity. It's his job.
Preparing families for long-duration missions is difficult. Star City encourages families to support each other, in the same way as Sasha and Anatoly will rely on each other in space.
Was Anatoly's last flight very long?
No, it only lasted 10 days. It was like being in a state of shock, but it passed very quickly and everything went fine. This flight will last 6 months. I can't imagine how I'm going to feel.
Lida, this is your husband's first flight.
Yes, for me, of course. Perhaps it's more difficult for me than for Natasha to imagine what it will be like.
Мало того, что... Да. То есть я не знаю, как это будет.
А как же? Особенно я.
Каким образом?
Ну как, неделями не появляешься домой.
Да, вот это точно.
Как думаете, дети воспримут ваш полет?
Обрадуются. Папа улетел, контроля нет. Ну, моя, наверное, будет... Папа, давай быстрее приезжай из командировки.
In the heart of Star City is a mock-up of the Mir space station. It's an exact replica of the one in space. In the future, a station like this could be propelled out of orbit to take cosmonauts on the 2-year round trip to Mars.
Let's go up to the deck.
Расскажем о нашем доме, о нашей
We'll
станции.
tell you about our home. This is the space station where we'll work and live. We'll be gathering data for scientific and medical research and for the development of manned space exploration.
About our home. Our future home will have 1, 2, 3, even 4 rooms.
Behind here are the computers. They help us perform different tasks, including navigation. They control all the functions programmed into the system, even while we are asleep.
Sleeping in space can be a strange sensation. Sometimes cosmonauts expand their work schedules so much that they allow no time for sleep at all.
I was standing by the window, looking out at the Earth. I hadn't had time to sleep for 3 days. I had planned a very demanding scientific program, and it was preying on my mind. So, it was the 3rd day. I was looking through the window, and I fell asleep. Zhanibekov told me later that when he entered the cabin, he saw that I was asleep in this position. The air current from the ventilator was blowing me from one wall of the cabin to the other. And all the time I was asleep in this position.
On board the station, we have this ventilator funnel, which provides our ship and living quarters with filtered air.
Now, let's move closer to the central part. That's to say, to our living quarters. Everything painted yellow is our living quarters. Our table. Over here is our little gym. Our running track. We need to do a strict program of exercises every day to keep ourselves in shape.
2 hours daily exercise is vital to help prevent muscles and bones from wasting away in zero gravity.
In this area are 2 cabins. Sasha is in one.
This is mine, the engineers. The one opposite is the commanders. They are both the same. If we'll really get bored looking at each other, we can go to our cabins for a break.
The person who has spent longer in space than anyone else is Yuri Romanenko. He has logged a total of 430 days in 3 missions and knows there's no place for sulking in orbit.
On Earth, you can say something offensive and it won't matter. It might be a misunderstanding. You can go to a different room, out to the street, into another house, or even leave the country. But up there, the room is limited, and there's nowhere to go. It's vital to have a thorough grasp of the job. There should be a mutual understanding, and of course one should listen to the advice of psychologists.
Any negative aspects of a person's character will be revealed in space. In extreme situations, things come out. The negative sides of a person will definitely surface in times of emotional stress. In our case, I'm sure that no such problems will occur. The problems simply won't arise.
They get to know everything about each other, right down to the rhythm of their heartbeats. Soviet doctors now understand many of the physiological changes the body undergoes during weightlessness. Blood circulation alters, with more blood going to the head and chest. So Solovyov is taking a crash course in cardiology to enable him to make ultrasonic measurements of Balandin's heart rhythms in space.
The commander is preparing another set of experiments. He has 5 sets of experiments to do. They involve both himself and the engineer. At the moment, he's looking at the engineer's chart and trying to memorize it.
Специалист по сердцу, а я кровосос.
А он специалист по крови. Саша, как вы себя чувствуете в качестве объекта исследования?
Любое исследовательское тело, я, лежа перед врачами, всегда молчу, дабы не сказать лишнего.
The most demanding part of the Soyuz flight for the commander is the rendezvous with the space station. The approach and docking are meant to be automatic, but if it fails, as it sometimes does, the commander must take over. In this special simulator, he is able to practice this delicate docking maneuver. He sees a video simulation as he approaches the space station. He aims his sights at a cross-wire target under the station's docking port. When the docking is complete, Leonov debriefs Solovyov.
Хорошо, я посмотрел. Конечной скорости очень точно выдерживающий все угловые по нулям. Идет железно. Переодевайся. Вот. Я понимаю, дизайнер, а чем вы платить будете дизайнеру?
With the axe hanging over Star City, the generals are constantly fighting budget cuts.
Какой заказчик? Попов? Значит, я, насколько знаю, это деньги за счет тренажеров. Таких денег у нас нету. Около 1 миллиона. Плохо это. Я тебе за 50 тысяч весь твой корпус персидскими коврами одену, между прочим.
It's 6 weeks to the launch. Balandin and Solovyov have spacewalk training. Inside this giant water tank are mock-ups of the Mir space station. The buoyancy of water simulates many of the feelings of weightlessness, so they can experience the difficulties of spacewalking.
It's pretty uncomfortable. It's like carrying a small ship on your back, especially here, where the frame is made of metal. It's like a shell. It reminds me of the suits of armor they used in medieval times. It's very heavy. You feel the weight. But the hands are more or less free, and it's easy to manage in the water. Аккуратненько. Саша. Хорошо.
There is no spacewalk scheduled for their mission, but they must always be ready to carry out emergency repairs. Today, they have to perform a safety drill where one partner rescues the other. In this case, Solovyov is pretending to have fallen unconscious on the spacewalk. Balandin must pull Solovyov back to the station airlock. Each time he moves, he must fasten himself to the station with clips to prevent them both from drifting off into space.
The aim of the exercise is to simulate a state of helplessness. First, I play the victim, then Anatoly has a go. We take it in turns to drag the other from where he lies unconscious to the hatch. Then he must be carried through into the airlock. It's very difficult. It's like pulling a drowning man out of a swamp. You must get into the airlock quickly and start repressurizing. You can imagine how difficult it is to do.
Sasha, would you like to go on a spacewalk?
Of course. All our friends who have done it say that looking at the Earth through a porthole was nothing compared to the feelings they experienced when they actually stepped outside and saw it there before them. This makes you really want to do it.
Yuri Romanenko is a veteran spacewalker, although his first excursion took everyone by surprise. On a mission in 1977, Romanenko and Grechko had to check suspected damage to a docking port on their space station.
We were in the docking port with the hatch open. I was holding on to Georgy Grechko by the foot straps of his spacesuit. The suits have special straps. I was holding on to him like this, with my hand in a glove. This was to ensure that the spacesuit and pack, which is fairly heavy, wouldn't damage the polished docking unit of Salyut 6.
When we'd nearly finished our work and I wanted to close the hatch, Yuri said, "Hold on a minute. I'm only 1 meter from open space. I want to go out there too." I told him that we didn't have a lot of time, but anyway, I told him to go and do it quickly. He was young, brave, and excited. He pushed himself forward and flew towards the hatch. I suddenly saw he'd forgotten to attach his safety belt. Luckily, as he flew past me, I managed to grab the rope and said, "Yuri, where do you think you're going? Where do you think you're flying to?" In fact, it wasn't that dangerous, because there was a power cable connecting his life support pack to the space station. So he wouldn't have really flown away. I would have been able to pull him back, like a fish. In other words, his life wasn't in danger. But the journalists made a big story out of it. So now Yuri gets upset when we talk about it.
It was Grechko's little joke. He likes joking. But he told the story in the wrong place. He told it in front of journalists who love that sort of thing.
As the rest of their mission had gone so well, they escaped reprimand for Yuri's moment of madness. General Zhany Bekov is in charge of the day-to-day running of the space station missions and has himself been to space 5 times. Today, he faces a crisis. After a series of delays, an extra unit designed to expand the Mir space station has failed to dock. It missed by several miles. Zhany Bekov calls a meeting of mission specialists, many of whom are veteran cosmonauts. The fate of the drifting module will be top of the agenda.
Далее, завтра, Борис Александрович, как у нас вообще обстановка общая?
Все идет нормально. Сегодня выполнен маневр на модуле Д успешно. Штатно, да? Да, штатно. Завтра экипажи будут выполнять ориентацию комплекса в ручном режиме.
On the following afternoon, the stray module made another approach. This time, it successfully docked with Mir and was swung round to the vertical position on the multiple docking port. It leaves the main port free to receive cargo ships carrying groceries and other vital supplies. In the last month of their mission aboard the space station, the current crew have a 2-way television link-up with their families. Balandin and Solovyov should be up there for the next family communication in a month's time.
3 тонны выжили?
3 тонны? Они в грузовике уже на землю собрались лететь.
Они живые?
Грузовик, грузовой корабль скоро от нас домой уходит.
А что это, па?
А это растение.
А почему у нее листьев почти нету?
Ну, тут один человек только нормально может жить, остальное все выживает как карлик.
Hidden away in Star City is a shrine to the first cosmonaut, Yuri Gagarin. His old office is kept exactly as it was, frozen in time.
This is the office of Yuri Gagarin. Everything has been left as he left it in 1968. His desk, his coat which he took off before the flight. The clock has been stopped at 10:31. Exactly the time his plane hit the ground.
It's a long-standing tradition that all departing cosmonauts come to Gagarin's office to write a dedication for the next chapter of space travel.
Gagarin's achievement in opening a way for mankind to reach space will always remain an ideal for new generations of cosmonauts. It is our duty to perform this mission as Gagarin would have done. Nowadays, people don't know your name or your face. We are not offended by this. It simply means that our profession has become more ordinary, that's all.
Интерес новизны вот такой, он как-то
поугас. Ну что, нам остается, в общем-то, только...
We now have to justify all the money that has been invested in this branch of the economy.
It's 2 weeks before launch, and the cosmonauts must leave for the Baikonur Cosmodrome. Family, friends, and veteran cosmonauts turn out to see them off. Romanenko wishes Solovyov good luck. Mrs. Balandin cannot come as she is about to have her baby. So Irina Pronina, one of the few female cosmonauts, brings Sasha's daughter Yulia to say goodbye.
Пошли.
Роддом 4 числа ждем.
Теперь, а кто роддом будет контролировать?
Из МБП врачи, мои друзья.
Ты вообще с ребятами с кем-то так договорился?
Там, где она в прошлый раз рожала, я ночью сюда поеду.
Это очень важно, чтобы кто останется одна, знаешь, как
Нет, здесь
плохо.
The Baikonur Cosmodrome is 1,200 miles away in a remote part of Kazakhstan. At its center is Leninsk, a whole city devoted to launching rockets into space. It's still a top security area rarely visited by Westerners. In the entire history of the Soviet space program, this is the only type of rocket they have allowed cosmonauts to ride on. Korolyov's 30-year-old design, which took Gagarin into space, is still dependable. Minus 30 degrees, much too cold for a NASA shuttle launch. Yet such harsh conditions are normal here. The launch will go on. Among the observers was James Oberg, a NASA mission controller from Houston. He would be witnessing a Soviet rocket launch for the first time. If all goes according to plan, Balandin and Solovyov will be leaving Earth in 2 hours' time. What thoughts are going through Balandin and Solovyov's minds? On their way to the observation point, Alexei Leonov describes to James Oberg what it feels like at this moment.
You check the spacesuits to make sure they're pressurized. This is all checked on Earth, and usually there is some time left over. Sometimes there is time to spare, and sometimes there isn't. When you do have time, your mind begins to wander. You start thinking about things unconnected to the flight. Yes, just for a moment. Yes, you start thinking about your family, your children, and how they will manage without you. Then Mission Control asks you, how are you feeling? And why are you so quiet? And you say, well, I'm thinking.
I know what's supposed to happen practically every second of the flight. What time the liftoff is. What's supposed to happen after that. And I probably worry more than anyone else, particularly about the launch, because I know it's the most dangerous moment, and it's almost as if I'm there.
Their Soyuz will orbit the Earth 33 times before the rendezvous with the Mir space station.
A cosmonaut knows there is a chance he might stay in space for good, that he may die on the voyage. This doesn't just apply to Soviet cosmonauts, but to all cosmonauts. There is always a chance that things will go wrong. When you go into space, you know you may never come back.
It's 2 days after liftoff. Mission Control is monitoring the next tense moment, their link-up with the space station. The final approach is going well. At 9:38 Moscow time, the ship docks with the station, exactly on schedule. Before the crew does anything, they must check they have an airtight seal with the space station. Then they can transfer to the airlock to change out of their spacesuits. An hour later, they open the hatch and join Viktorenko and Serebrov aboard Mir. The first couple of weeks in space are the most difficult for the human body. Often, cosmonauts feel nauseous as they adapt to weightlessness. If their faces look bloated, it's because without gravity, more blood goes to the head.
Это поначалу у нас всегда немножко координация движения не соответствует, вернее, она соответствует земной.
There is a changeover period of a week when both crews are aboard the station. Before the other crew returns home, one of them has a birthday to celebrate. And Balandin now has a baby son.
Юль, как брат поживает? Юля, кричит, нет? Лида, расскажи, как там Леха?
Леха уже за 2 недели подрос. Ну, как все дети, и кричит, и плачет, все делает. И ест, и спит, как положено.
Все исполняет регулярно?
Да.
Как батюшка. Ракову. Не засушенный.
Здравствуй, папа.
Здравствуй, малыш. Здравствуй, Юленька. Ну, ты довольна, что у тебя братик есть?
Да.
Ой, молодец. Ты маме помогаешь?
Да.
Ой, какая хорошая умница. Труженица, как и мама. 3 минуты осталось.
Ребята, 2 слова только о вашем самочувствии. Вы такие веселые, и, наверное, все хорошо, да? По виду так вы совсем прямо очень даже хорошо.
Вообще-то, ты знаешь, нормально. А вот второй раз легче значительно, а Саша как будто бы здесь и жив.
Ну вот я и смотрю,
Это
что
он
такой
про
веселый
меня.
и прыгает. Ну, вам очень большой всем привет. Огромное количество народу приходило в день стыковки. Все поздравляли и огромный привет. Больше времени не занимаем.
When you fly over the planet day after day, week after week, month after month, you see the beautiful planet and think about the people down there. Especially when you fly over the town where you were born and grew up, where your family and friends live. All the time, somewhere in the back of your mind, you think about them and talk to them. No matter how interesting the work in space is, and I really love it, you think how good it will be when the mission is over and you will return to them.
At the school in Star City, the children have good reason to be interested in space travel. But what will the future hold for them? Can a country in such economic turmoil afford such an expensive space program? With the Mars project on ice, should the length of manned missions be cut back? These are the questions facing General Shatalov, head of Star City.
There are a lot of arguments here, because some people want longer and longer space flights. What would be the point? While there is no definite Mars program yet, I think that we should shorten the length of time spent in space to 3, 4, 5, 6 months. That way, crews function better and don't lose interest in their work. They can go to space more often. But if you are there for 18 months or 2 years, the cosmonaut is like a disposable syringe, used once and thrown away. Who would go on to a 2-year flight if they'd already been up that long?
Even though the future of a 2-year Mars mission remains in doubt, the Soviets are still conducting long-duration experiments. This incubator contains quail eggs, which could provide a highly efficient supply of fresh protein on such long journeys. In the future, they will have more industrial and biochemical experiments that can earn money for the space program. And they are already growing several $1 million worth of crystals for their hard-pressed semiconductor industry. At the moment, they are celebrating another first, another birthday. Their first quail chick has just hatched and is trying to come to terms with zero gravity.
После того, как мы его вытащили из инкубатора, он дрожит, трудно сказать,
Towards the end of the mission, they try to take more exercise to prepare themselves for the return to Earth. They should be doing 5 or 6 hours a day, but it's about to be cut short. Sasha's wish to see open space will be fulfilled after all. They have just been told that they will have to go on an emergency spacewalk to repair their spaceship. The insulation blanket on their Soyuz capsule was torn when it separated from the rocket. The loose cover could wrap around sensors and endanger their re-entry. If they can't fix it, there's a spare Soyuz-crafted Baikonur which could be sent up to rescue them. And in Star City, there's also a cosmonaut on permanent standby ready to man the rescue craft. Star navigation training in this special planetarium is part of his preparation for making a rendezvous with a stricken spaceship.
I am now ready to go to space to carry out a rescue mission. I could be ready within a few days for such a mission. I really hope that my work will never be needed. Let's hope everything will be all right and the boys won't need to be rescued.
At Mission Control, they draw up a plan for the precarious repair. Because there's no place to attach their safety lines on the Soyuz spacecraft, Balandin and Solovyov will need a ladder to reach the damaged ship. The ladder was too big to put in a cargo ship, so they waited for the launch of a new technical laboratory which was being flown up to the space station. It would add a new wing to the station and would be moved round to make way for the damaged ship. The plan was to carry the ladder out of the airlock, down the side of the station, and then to bridge the gap between the spacecraft and the station. It looks simple in theory. The reality is rather different. Maneuvering their cumbersome spacesuits across such a long distance is arduous. Every time they move, they have to attach the clips of their safety lines. The folded-up ladder is an extra burden. This would turn into a record-breaking 7-hour spacewalk. On reaching the Soyuz, Balandin and Solovyov decide a repair is impossible. So they strip off all the insulation. By the time they finish, they're exhausted. They inch their way back in the dark, only to discover another problem. Earlier, they had damaged the outer door of the airlock, and they don't have enough strength to shut it. Their air supply is almost finished, but eventually they get back in. The next crew would have to repair the damaged door. Their relief crew, the Vulcans, join them the week before they are due to leave. Balandin and Solovyov are ready to return. As their spacecraft leaves orbit and begins re-entry, a dozen helicopters set off to begin the search for the returning cosmonauts. The Soviet Union has always retrieved its cosmonauts over land rather than the sea. Our pilot's the first to spot the capsule. When it's a meter from the ground, a retro rocket is automatically fired to cushion the landing. Local Kazakh peasants come swarming in from the surrounding fields. The doctors are worried. They appear to be in a worse condition than cosmonauts who have spent a year in space. The drama of the previous weeks had left no time for the exercise regime or re-entry preparations. and now they are feeling the full force of Earth's gravity. The doctors decide to move them into a medical tent. After 6 months' weightlessness, they are too weak to walk. Ten minutes later, they are beginning to readapt to life on Earth.
I thought you weren't planning to come. When we were over Canada and England, we always remembered our meetings and conversations with you.
How was the re-entry? Как у вас шла посадка вхождения плотные слои?
It was a very tense moment. Once you enter the atmosphere, you can see sparks and fire through the porthole. It's an impressive sight.
Эта картина впечатляющая.
In the Western press, there were a lot of reports that you might be stranded in space. I think they were probably exaggerated. Well, did you at any time feel danger while you were up there?
Вы чувствовали в космосе, чувствовали себя как в опасности?
To be honest, there probably was a certain amount of danger, but you don't really think about it when you're up there. You only think about your work and whether you have done everything at the right time. The spacewalk lasted longer than we expected, especially when we had to get back to the space station in the dark.
Я думаю, что всегда будет не хватать.
Мы не торопимся. Просто... Толя, сейчас мы тебе снимем тихонечко рубашку, ты сам не напрягайся. Не понял?
We're so pleased to see you back safely.
You don't know how good it is to see you.
How was it actually different doing the spacewalk from the hydrotank?
Когда мы снимали вас в гидролаборатории с Толей, когда вы тренировали космос.
Oh, it was easier because in the hydro laboratory people get in the way.
What will you miss most from Mir?
Что вам больше всего не будет доставать, где будет не хватать на станции Мир?
It was home. Half a year is a long time. I spent a lot of time observing the Earth and taking pictures. I have this image now of the Earth. I will dream about it for a long time. It's not only in my mind, but it's in my heart as well. It's like a photograph, this image. I won't be able to forget it. I'm jealous of the Vulcan crew. I'm very attached to the space station.
Sasha, when we were talking to you in Star City, you were always very keen to underplay the job, saying it was just another job. Do you still believe this?
It's just a job. Yes. Well, it's my opinion. I formed a long time ago. And so far it hasn't changed. In some ways, the work's extraordinary, but I still feel the same. In the past, people wrote and talked about the early aviators. They had fame, glory, everything. Of course, pilots have none of that now. I believe it should be the same for us. We should simply do our job and receive less attention. Well, maybe just a little less.
Soon they will begin training for their next mission. Already they are talking about returning to their home in space. True heroes of the cosmos.
Знаете, каким он парнем был, на руках весь мир его носил. Сын земли и звезд не был и прост, людям свет как дан понес. Он сказал: поехали, он взмахнул рукой, словно вдаль по питерской пронесся над землей. Знаете, каким он парнем был, как на лед он с клюшкой выходил, как он песни пел весел, был и смел, как азартно жить хотел. Он сказал: поехали, он взмахнул рукой, словно вдоль по питерской несется над землей.